Are you watching PP News Live? Where the events of planet Earth and the secrets of outer space are analyzed like nowhere else. Thank you for subscribing.
How are you? How's it going? Very good. Let's start with the news about what's happening in the world. And, well, one of the topics we've been following the most in the last, what would it be, 4 or 5 weeks? It's the Three-Eye Atlas, and this time, the interstellar object. Well, it keeps showing some kind of maneuver, which, according to astrophysicist Avi Loeb, would require an explanation. Because, obviously, up until now, it hasn't been found. What's going on? There are two things that stand out. One has to do with the way the Three-Eye Atlas is floating and moving. This interstellar object? Well, what stands out is its pulsating light variability exactly every 16 hours. This is striking. And here, well, they say Loeb himself says, it's a kind of cosmic heartbeat, so to speak, a kind of natural heartbeat. We still don't understand why it's happening. Or would this be just another anomaly to identify it as something else? The point is that it's an anomaly. At the very least, the object has a pulsating light variability exactly every 16 hours, although the conventional explanation right now is attributing this to a possible rotation of the core. This also draws attention, since Professor Avi Loeb, the Harvard professor, just published an analysis in which he debunked this theory, right? Because they said it's spinning every 16 hours and that's why it has a kind of shine. With that accuracy, right? Is it possible that it's spinning? Is it now? That's why they talked about it having a rotation in that sense. But well, now? The analysis shows this situation has been dismantled. He says the core is too small, probably now. According to the new calculations, it would be 2.8 kilometers. In order to generate this brightness fluctuation by itself, it couldn't happen. The light doesn't come from the body but from the coma, says Loeb himself. That is from the halo, right? Which inflates and deflates rhythmically. And this draws attention. This is where National Aeronautics and Space Administration's official narrative comes in. Of the natural comet. It clashes with mathematics. It clashes with science, with the same data, with the facts. If we accept standard physics, a natural comet expels gas. This happens when the ice heats up as it gets closer to the sun. This would create a jet in the direction of the sun. The thing is that this anti-tail shape has formed. Loeb, for now, describes it in his latest publication as a heartbeat, a kind of periodic pumping of gas that feeds the halo every 16 hours. For this to be natural, that heartbeat must be strictly aligned with the sun. But when analyzing the sequence of images from the last few days, we discovered that this jet points in an arbitrary direction. This will clearly attract attention. Regardless of the solar position, the jet hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. In the sense that when it points to a spot, it repeats it and repeats it several times. We are just a few weeks away from December 19th and tomorrow the countdown begins. So to speak, December hasn't started yet. And we'll be counting the days and hours to get closer to Atlas 3, or is it 3 and Atlas? And to be able to see it in a better way. We're living through a very interesting moment. Whether it's because it's confirmed to be natural and something extremely exotic, or because it's something else. If the core rotates every 16 hours, why is the periodic variability on the order of tens of %? I mean, for a technological object, the direction of the pulsing jet could be arbitrary and not necessarily point toward the sun, according to what Loeb himself says. I mean, we're seeing that it doesn't explain, let's say, why it's reacting this way. An object that in theory would be a natural comet, and that as it gets closer to the sun should start to have different reactions. Not showing a reaction. It has stayed stable this whole time. There are many doubts. There are many things that are still being studied for now. For example, the issue of the size of the core. Why has the core lasted so long all this time? And those kinds of details that we'll have to wait a little longer to get all the information. Among these latest publications, there's also something that stands out. And that's that this week was key for what they called a cascade of information that, by the way, didn't happen. That cascade of information that should have been revealed hasn't happened. There are some astrophysicists who have made an effort to publish some things, some astronomers, photographers, and especially amateurs who have published a few things. Some new images that draw attention. Today, a new image is being published. It's not very spectacular, I'll tell you that right away, but in the end, it's a new image. This one comes from the Czech Republic, and it's this image. There, the comet doesn't have a tail, from what you can see. Captured by Dalibor Hans. This was taken on November 27th. We've seen several images from November 27th. This is the comet. We can see it there. It's around there. You can't see it, at least in this image. You can't see much of a tail. A little bit here, a little bit there, but that's it. You can't see those jets like we've seen in other images. But, well, it's a new image, right? Taken from Pavlovice in the Czech Republic on the 27th, captured by Dalibor Hans. It's, well, one of the latest images. We'll see from these next few days, in theory, increasingly better images. Doesn't it match? We don't match up perfectly to see it super close, but at least enough so that we can get closer, 3 in front and behind. Enough, right? Here we're seeing how the comet passed by Mars first. It has made, as you know, a change in this route in which it apparently will be getting closer, slightly more than expected, to Jupiter's Gill radius. If this happens, the moment it gets closer, it could be pulled a little by Jupiter's own gravity. Either to change its route or to stay in the area, right? This isn't believed to happen due to the speed it's traveling at, right? But, well, you don't know, you just don't know. At that moment, on December 19th, when it will be around here, the comet and the Earth will be around here. We will be about 200 and something million kilometers apart. That's the closest moment we'll have. And then the comet, in theory, well, it will keep moving toward Jupiter. And it will reach Jupiter on March 16th. That's the date when it will be approaching Jupiter. And then afterwards, if everything continues under this normality, well, it will keep moving. Well, that's it. A fixed course, right? Not to leave the zone system afterwards. Well, fixed in quotes because there have been slight variations, but still. That's how things stand with number 3 and Atlas right now. That's the update so far, up to this moment. As more information emerges, we'll keep discussing it here as always on this broadcast. Now let's move on to another topic that's obviously important as well. What's happening with Venezuela? There's an image that's drawing attention today, which is this publication made by the Venezuelan government, in which the Venezuelan regime accuses the United States of what's happening with the attacks on the boats in the Caribbean. Let's listen a bit to what they've been saying.
Just a few minutes ago, we gathered here in the office of the President of the National Assembly with relatives of Venezuelans who were murdered, executed extrajudicially in the clearly illegitimate and illegal actions that have been carried out since September 2nd by members of the United States military. As you can see, we have protected the identities of these relatives since they have been receiving threats.
Well, that's the accusation Venezuela is making against the United States. Obviously, it's a serious issue, and even Europe has criticized the United States for these extrajudicial actions, saying, look, if they're causing harm, then the necessary measures should be taken, like holding a trial, detaining them, and so on. The accusation from the Venezuelan government through the President of the National Assembly. From Jorge Rodriguez, he has formally accused United States military personnel of carrying out what he called extrajudicial executions of Venezuelan citizens. He shows an image with a family, an alleged family of these people who are facing a way to protect their identity. And it is said that these incidents began on September 2nd. He says this occurred in international Caribbean waters, where maritime traffic and strategic surveillance are high, according to reports. There are several things that catch your attention today regarding the topic of Venezuela, and I would like to talk about them. Several reactions both within the United States and within Venezuela itself. There is also internal pressure, there are internal pressures, external pressures, there's a bit of everything in Venezuela. Apart from this, a complaint is made against Lopez. I mean, this oil organization has made or generated a reaction that also draws attention today and in which it makes an accusation. And today was a day of complaints and accusations from Venezuela, this time against Lopez. Yes, that's what they said. Which Venezuela is it? What else happened? Well, reactions, because there are also reactions over there in the United States from the congressmen. Well, they don't see, at least some of them don't see these actions as positive actions. Let's say they're seeing that this could turn into a war that could go on for a while. And this situation obviously is part of what they've criticized. First of all, they're talking about an operation where Venezuela complains, saying they want to go after the oil. And what if the Caribbean Sea has turned into a theater of unconventional warfare operations? United States drones and ships would be carrying out lethal attacks against small boats under the label of anti-narcotics operations. But there are no judicial processes, nor are there clear identifications being made according to what he says. On the other hand, also within these movements, or within this complaint, or this accusation that is being made, well, it seeks, at least according to what this one says, well, Venezuela itself. They are seeking, in this case, to go after the oil reserves. Venezuela reports to Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries that the United States is trying to take control of the crude oil reserves. Caracas warned that the United States had deployed 14 ships and 15,000 military personnel in the Caribbean region. These forces have carried out more than 20 bombings against alleged drug trafficking vessels, according to the same regime, resulting in the deaths of 80 people. The Venezuelan government is making this complaint to the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, that is, Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, in which, well, they are now making this complaint official. I don't know if that complaint really applies there. I mean, if it applies directly to Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, but, well, they make it there, right? That's the thing that catches your attention. Venezuela shows it that, well, they have the largest reserve on the planet and that through force, they basically intend to take the oil, right? Take the reserves, he says. On the other hand, Venezuela's airports would be operating normally despite Donald Trump's warning, which has been reiterated, in a warning in which, well, they insist the airspace over all of Venezuela should be closed. Well, this hasn't been taken into account, at least not by some airlines. The Maiquetía International Airport, or Maiquetía, actually the main airport in Caracas, right? And the gateway to Caracas, right? Did it operate normally today? No, yesterday actually. It was operating, according to them, normally. Well, some airlines maybe, right? But normally, honestly, I don't think so either. I'm telling you because we were tracking it on Fly Radar, and clearly there was a lot less activity. I'm also saying, well, it's partly because, I mean, there are international airlines that haven't wanted to operate, right? Both from America and Europe and so on, right? But for example, it's striking right now that there actually is a significant number of planes, right? There's even been a Mexican Air Force plane seen flying around here, something that also, well, obviously it draws attention. It would be a plane that was flying in that area. Here we have it. This plane. According to reports, it's a Mexican Air Force plane, leaving Maiquetía with the transponder working intermittently. They were turning it off and on, so the big question here is who's moving around there? And why? Is the Mexican Air Force flying in that area? This obviously draws attention. We'll see what is said about it, right? Let's see if there's some information about it. But well, that's how it is, right? There is movement. You can see movement in Caracas. We're seeing all these flights, right? They're coming in, they're going out. Honestly, the closure of the airspace doesn't seem to be happening. There are more flights here, more flights. So is all of this within Venezuela? And well, practically they're mostly commercial flights, right? For example, this one goes from Valencia to Bogota. This other one doesn't say where it's going. One plane seems to be private. This one goes from Caracas to El Vigía. This other one goes from Barcelona over there in Venezuela to an uncertain place. It doesn't say where. Another plane, also one of these small ones. Almost all of them are smaller planes rather than anything else. But there are some airlines that are operating. Here you can see them then. Well, there's a lot of activity in this area, right? This is the one from Mexico. Look, I just saw it again right there. This one is live. This one is live and we just detected it. That's the plane. Let's see. Hey, where is it moving from? This is the plane. Ah, wow. Oh, Mexico Air Force. It says Mexico Air Force. This would be, well, a plane from the military here in Mexico. Oh, it's not going from Caracas, but it doesn't say where to, right? That also catches your attention. And we see this is the flight. There it goes. Like it's coming back. I mean, it seems like it's heading to Mexico. Oh, okay, I see. What's the idea? What's the intention? Well, who knows, right? Honestly, this is pretty crazy too. What else has happened? Well, a Russian tour operator who was heading to Venezuela had to change course. Because, well, is this the plane? Is that the plane? They're Russian tourists who were going to Venezuela. Yes. This Russian tour operator is redirecting his clients who were going to travel to Venezuela to Cuba. He's sending them to Cuba. Yes, it's called Pegas Touristic. He will move all his flights originally scheduled to Margarita Island to Varadero due to the potential security threat to civilian flights. Russian tourists are already redirecting to Cuba according to reports. This also draws attention. In this case, Russia also announces that it will be evacuating Russian citizens who are in Venezuela. Another important point as well. It will send some special flights to get them out of the country, as well as the tour operators. They're sending them to Cuba, right? Those who are going on vacation and all that, well, they're not going to Venezuela for now. They'll be going to Cuba, according to the reports. This is also part of what's happening now, isn't it? What happened? Where's Maduro? Is he at the border with Brazil? Is he in Caracas? Where is he? Well, we'll see about that too, right? For now, there are no details. Brazil hasn't said anything at all about it, about what cable news network Brazil was saying yesterday, right? Or was it Cable News Network Brazil? They mentioned this, right? So, well, what are the Democrats specifically saying? The leader of the Democrats in the United States Senate, Chuck Schumer, warns that these actions, right? Well, they could lead to an expensive war, he says, for the United States, right? Is it this gentleman? He is the leader of the Democrats in the House, where he says, well, that the situation could get complicated. Obviously, right? That, well, is a warning. Also, The unusual and constant deployment of United States military aircraft, deployment obviously, well, from Venezuela itself. Considering the current nervousness, well, it could cause a mistake, it could cause one of them to make an error, and this could escalate. A war? Well, a complicated one. A war that could drag on over time, obviously. Not just the Democrats, right? There are also some Republicans who haven't looked favorably on the way things have been handled. And that too, obviously, can have ramifications in Washington. This situation is, let's say, in motion. It's becoming concerning what is being observed. With this Venezuela, but also in the Caribbean, well, there's a certain nervousness right now. There's a historic rupture in Washington regarding the Republican Party. For example, Marjorie Taylor Greene and other Republicans have been criticizing this stance of Trump. Wanting to get involved in various international issues, including the issue of Iran, was not well received. The issue of Venezuela, or wanting to operate a possible war in Venezuela, was also not well received. So, well, we'll also be keeping an eye on how things are going there. Also, right from the start, towards Venezuela. There is increasing pressure, and intelligence claims that there is pressure from different groups, some of which believe there should already be an exit plan. On one hand, there are elite groups within Venezuela, and others inside Venezuela insist that they have to stay, that there's no way to leave. So there is this internal division and internal pressure from Venezuela, from, let's say, the leaders of the Venezuelan regime. Some are in favor of, well, yes, seeking refuge and going somewhere else. Others say that they have to stay there until the very end, basically. So there's this division as well. It's believed that there's pressure, obviously, on Maduro, but it's not just Maduro, also Padrino and Rodriguez. I mean, a lot of people who are out there who are, well, thinking twice about what's going to happen, what they're going to do, what's the next move going to be. Likewise, well, on Trump's side, there's the internal pressure of whether to act or not, with the risk that this could drag on. And, well, he loses the support he has left right now. Or that the move works out for him strategically, let's say, and that it becomes this little medal he wants to pin on himself. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But everything indicates that a move is coming. I mean, an operation is coming. When they close the airspace, usually it means something else is coming. Now, that airspace, what is it for? Why is it closed? Well, it has to be done in a decisive way, which hasn't happened. The airspace is not closed. We need to be clear about that. It is what it is. I mean, it's not closed. The United States says it should be closed, but just look, it's not closed. I mean, it's really not closed. See for yourselves. I mean, there's a lot of movement, right? Yes, there's a lot of movement, especially between Caracas and Colombia. To Callao, to Quesimeto Este, let's go, right? What kind of movement towards Curacao? From Trinidad and Tobago is the starting point, right? And in this area, you don't see much movement. This area doesn't have much movement, but let's say, well, at least in Caracas, you do see a lot of activity. And all this area along the coast of Venezuela, right? So, well, that's the area. Notice that the German army went on alert. Even their homeland defense systems were already put on alert to attack, because they started to detect that there were movements from the Russians with jets, with Russian fighter planes. Obviously, this has attracted a lot of attention. What's happening in NATO? What's happening with this German action? This obviously also draws attention. Units of the German army deployed in Poland put the Patriot systems on alert due to an approach of the Patriot systems. And this, well, is already starting to be seen. Unexpected actions from Germany with Solj. They have been observed with this Middle East respiratory syndrome. These are the domestic systems. The units of the armed forces in Germany are present in Poland. In Poland, there are NATO forces from different countries. A German unit that is in Poland detected that fighter jets were coming towards Poland. Do not pass. They turned around. But obviously, given the situation and the possible risk, they said the homeland systems would be activated, so they activated the homeland systems this weekend. The presence of these planes, which operate in the western area, right on the border with Ukraine and Poland, has made the Polish nervous, but also NATO. According to reports in the Bild newspaper today, Sunday, the last day of November, Russian Mikoyan Gurevich, 31 fighter jets, were flying towards Poland, where Polish air defense systems were activated, and the German military operating the Patriot systems also activated these systems. Polish and NATO forces are stationed there. These Patriot systems are ready to operate. Part of the activity that has been observed in recent moments. On the other hand, there is also something that is obviously drawing attention because it has been revealed by the Wall Street Journal. An extremely scandalous case between the United States and Ukraine. Is it part of Trump's plan for the peace plan? A case would show that, well, the intention is a lot towards business. Let's get into the details of that topic. According to what this Wall Street Journal story reveals, they claim that there is an impressive amount of money, $30 billion, from secret deals. They are definitely looking to profit. With Russian assets and payments from major donors revealed by the Wall Street Journal. At the center of this ambitious plan by Donald Trump to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. Peace isn't the main priority. What comes first and far above everything else is money, profits. This is a thorough investigation by the Wall Street Journal. The envoys of Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. By the way, I want you to look at this image and tell me, what do you see? Is this what you see in the image? It's truly amazing. Marco Rubio will be speaking there in the image, right? But what I want you to see are Witkoff's reactions, the reactions of the others. They're in Florida, so is this meeting taking place in the United States? Are all the people in this row, right? Are these the Ukrainians in this row? There are two flags. They're meeting, and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is giving his speech. And this is Trump's special envoy, this Witkoff. Witkoff is a personal friend, very, very close to Trump. He's a businessman, not a politician or diplomat, but they sent him as a special envoy. Since the fall of Russia, since the fall of the Soviet Union, he has been traveling with Trump to do business over there in Russia since those times. He has a huge relationship with Russia. This has been documented for decades now, since the 80s, right? As soon as the Soviet Union falls, the business movement starts. So, I want you to look at his face and his face. He's the Ukrainian, obviously. He's clearly operating. Remember that a call was leaked recently? Here, I'll share the full text from that leaked call, where he's making an agreement with the Russians to convince Trump. About what, basically? Well, Ukraine gets screwed, right? I mean, this guy is trying to screw Ukraine at all costs. That's his intention. Here are the Ukrainians in front of him. Notice his face, how he looks at them, and how nervous he appears. Now let's hit play. Here goes.
The end goal is obviously not just the end of the war. Obviously, that's essential and fundamental. We want an end to the killing, death, and suffering, and I know the Ukrainians do too. They want peace. But it's also about securing an end to the war that leaves Ukraine sovereign and independent, and with an opportunity for real prosperity. So this is not just about ending a war, this is about ending a war. In a way that creates a path enabling them to be independent and sovereign, end war forever and bring great prosperity to the people. Not just rebuild, but start a period of major economic growth. Ukraine has enormous economic potential. Ukraine has tremendous opportunity.
Well, you can see Vaikov is nervous there. The Ukrainians are looking at Vaikov quite directly. In the background is Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who is also one of those involved in this whole business. A business, right? A mega business, yes. This extensive investigation by the Wall Street Journal, with Trump's envoys Steve Vaikov and Jared Kushner in talks with Russian officials. Watch out. Designed to position United States companies and Trump's closest allies to profit once the conflict is over. Are the companies of Trump's allies and partners positioning themselves, Trump, to put themselves in a great position and do business with Russia at full capacity? Russia has enormous amounts of resources and vast stretches of territory, Vikov told El Jornal. His comments come just a week after they were discovered advising Russian representatives on how to flatter the president to secure favorable deals. Vikov discussed with the president whether Russia, the United States, and Ukraine might become future trade partners. He says if we do this and everyone prospers and participates, everyone already benefits. That will naturally be a safeguard in future conflicts there because everyone prospers, said Vaikov. According to what the joint initiative between Russia, Russian business, and the United States reports, among them, there would be an amount of $300 billion in frozen assets that would be just right there, so that it can be transferred to United States companies for investment and reconstruction projects in Ukraine as an investment. So you mean making business out of the destruction caused by Putin? Yes, all that destruction that was caused would become a business, that's all. The business of construction companies and all that, that's normal. There has to be business, obviously. No, but it will be an investment business involving the future of everything built. Future profits from those places would go directly to the United States and Russia. So obviously that's a mega super business, right? Meanwhile, a Russian neighbor warns Ukraine after another oil pipeline attack, since Kiev's attacks on infrastructure targeting oil exports are also harmful to other countries. This time, Kazakhstan is issuing a warning saying not to cross over to their side, basically, right? That's important, though, obviously, because the relationship between the countries close to Russia is currently tense. Because, well, lately there have been problems with drones moving toward their borders. The attacks on 2 oil tankers linked to Russia. Now there's a third one. Remember the 2 oil tankers in the Black Sea that Ukrainians attacked with drones? Well, they were oil tankers that were on their way to be loaded. They were still empty, but obviously they were affected. There's a third oil tanker, which is this one. Do you see it? Is it sunk? I mean, the whole bottom part is already underwater. It's a third shadow oil tanker, also part of this ghost fleet. In just 48 hours, they've attacked, this time on the coast of Senegal. To make sure, since they already attacked the refineries and all that, now they're also attacking the oil tankers. These so-called ghost tankers are the ones operating to sell oil under the table to India, to China, and to other countries, right? That's also pretty well documented. By the way, did the president of Poland have a meeting with this Viktor Orban? Do you remember Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary who just met with Vladimir Putin? Well, regarding this meeting, because of Viktor Orban's meeting with Putin, the president of Poland cancelled the meeting with Viktor Orban. And that self-isolation that Viktor Orban is experiencing by meeting, in this case with Putin, is starting to grow. Thank you. Is he playing? Well, in a strange way, Viktor Orban... By the way, there was a report of attacks today on the Ukrainian capital. 11 injured, 1 dead, according to the latest report. Drone attacks. Are the attacks on the capital continuing? According to today's report, there were also minor attacks in this area, but there were also attacks on other Ukrainian regions. Today was not as intense as the day before yesterday, when the attacks really increased between Friday and Saturday. When Viktor Orban visited Putin, that day there were 36 missiles and 600 drones. It was really, really intense. But let's move on to another important issue that's also happening there in Europe. Let's get to it. He says that due to the closure of the airspace of a European country, Moldova's airspace is being closed. This time, these Russian drones are detected right at the border. Look, let's go to the map right away, but they closed the border of Moldova. We have to remember, Moldova has this entire border with Ukraine. It also has this whole section. It also shares a border with Ukraine. And then on this part of the western area, it shares a border with Romania. This country is part of NATO, but here is where the war is, right? The war has been hitting really hard in this area of Odessa. Attacks have also been reported toward Lviv and the entire western part of Ukraine. So, given the risk to Moldovan aviation, on this occasion the airspace had to be closed. The Moldovan government temporarily suspended commercial flights after detecting drones or unmanned aerial vehicles in their country. They say it forced operations to be diverted and delayed while the risk was assessed. Nationwide, right? Between 10:43 post-meridium and 11:53 post-meridium, the Moldovan authorities banned all flights as an emergency measure after detecting that unmanned aerial vehicles were illegally flying over their country. Well, there's the report. By the way, changing the subject. It is also reported that Taiwan may be heading toward a potential conflict. It's no longer something that's distant. I think everyone in the community has already noticed it. President Tsai Ing-wen says that her country is in urgent need of building its own strength. She says the country must build its own strength in the face of the threat from the Chinese regime, just like that, without. She didn't mince words, right? She said it directly. William Ley? Did he push for this military proposal? And they claim that, well, it's an extraordinary effort that has to be made right now for the security on the island. He says the island must build its own force and maintain a high level of military readiness to preserve peace and the strait, in the face of growing pressure from China just days after it was proposed. An extraordinary budget for defense. Yes, thank you. They're looking for about $39.4 billion, more or less. Well, to have this, right, to approve. This, well, it's also an important part of today. By the way, another matter that draws attention. The United States would be, well, not only in negotiations with Ukraine, but now it's also happening. A series of movements, or recently movements towards Somalia, right? We've mentioned here how there were a series of reports about United States helicopters heading towards Somalia, attacking Islamic State of Iraq and Syria positions, right? We discussed it here. This attack, or this area, has declared a state of emergency in Somalia, with millions of people currently living in a terrible situation. That's why Islamic State of Iraq and Syria got involved due to these crises. The pastoralist communities are currently affected since there have been 4 rainy seasons that failed, or rainy seasons that were skipped 1 year, and then the next year there was no rain either, and now it's been 4 years. Somalia's authorities, as reported by the United Nations, state that millions face hunger due to drought in the region. The international community is now watching to see what it will do, because there are millions of people who, if they don't even have water to drink, will start fleeing to other places to go somewhere else. Meanwhile, airstrikes in Somalia are intensifying against Islamic State of Iraq and Syria groups and Al-Qaeda groups that are in the area. Taking advantage of this whole crisis, these groups are trying to get in wherever they can. According to reports, this time there have been a number of airstrikes that haven't been counted yet, but they have multiplied. They claim it's at least about 10 times. During the Trump administration, compared to the Biden administration, the United States Africa Command, known as United States Africa Command, confirmed this weekend that several airstrikes were carried out. So far, there have been approximately 100 airstrikes against radical groups in this area in 2025. In the last operation, which is the one we talked about, it was him, Artes. Would it be around Tuesday or Wednesday? There would be attacks against the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria jihadists in the mountains, where they reportedly eliminated several of the most important leaders of that group, according to what was being said. Another matter that also draws attention today is that the Michoacan prosecutor's office reportedly confirmed an arrest warrant against this person. Yes, against. He's the head of schools for Carlos Manso, no more and no less. Obviously, that's also huge in this case, and will be here. Well, moving on. Jose Manuel Jimenez Miranda, colonel of the Mexican Army and head of schools of Carlos Manso Rodriguez. The mayor of Uruapan, who was eliminated on November 1st, is the person who escaped from an operation in which 7 of the mayor's bodyguards were arrested, these accused of the crime of homicide by omission. The State Attorney General's office reportedly stated that there is an arrest warrant against this man, Jose Manuel Jimenez, who before becoming the head of schools under the late mayor, was the Secretary of Public Security of Uruapan for 28 days from September 1 to 28 in 2024. After being accused of assaulting his wife and threatening her with a gun, he was dismissed from his position by Carlos Manso himself. Carlos Manso himself dismissed him, and he went from being the Secretary of Public Security. Look to the Chief of Escorts. So just imagine. Colonel Jimenez Miranda was replaced by Army Brigadier General Francisco Javier Nieto Osorio, who is currently still in the position. His advisor was removed at the time, and now, after the incident, now there is an arrest warrant. That too obviously needs to be followed up. In the meantime, let me tell you that the matter is not closed. But has that Benjamin Netanyahu already asked to see the president or the prime minister? Not about her, about Israel, which has had a lot of controversies, whether it's for corruption, for the attacks in Gaza, for a lot of internal controversies, even internal trials that are being held against him in Israel itself. And so a petition was made, a petition, by the way, of 111 pages. Before President Isaac Herzog, remember they already have both a prime minister and a president. They asked President Isaac Herzog to grant him a pardon, basically to forgive him. This is mainly about the acts he's accused of, corruption, which have generated protests for years now. Protests every Saturday. Sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. But on Saturdays, there are protests in Israel against Netanyahu precisely because of acts of corruption. And now, well, they present this document, this 111-page petition, along with a personal letter signed by Netanyahu, so that he is pardoned, forgiven for everything, and all cases are no longer investigated. Well, that's something that Trump himself had suggested to Herzog, the president of Israel. He had suggested that he pardon him. And well then, the formal request is in now, right? We'll see what happens. In the meantime, let's move on to another important matter. Well, historic flooding is being reported right now in several parts of the world. But there are 2 places that have been surprising because of these floods, where hundreds of people have lost their lives and there are hundreds missing. Between 2 floods, just between 2 countries. Yes, on one hand, we're talking about floods in Indonesia, which have been very severe, and we're talking about the floods that have happened in a region, rather, it would also be Malaysia, as well as what happened in Vietnam, what happened in the Philippines, and what happened in part of India. Mainly, the ones from Malaysia are the toughest, even without considering the others. Hundreds died there. There are 330 dead, or 370, according to my latest data. Sorry, it's 435 now. The number keeps rising and I just updated it. 435 dead and 400 missing as well. I mean, do you remember that I mentioned the floods here? That They hadn't seen or reported that amount of rain in the last 300 years. That's what they said. Clearly, when something like that happens, there are consequences, right? I mean, not just the issue of the people who died. There are damages to infrastructure. There are damages to streets, to blocked bridges, to overflows. We had already seen this bridge collapse, right? These recurring overflows. 435 people dead, 406 missing torrential rains, and the tropical storm that has affected this whole region. What they were saying is that it's not a storm, it's a group of storms. We were able to see it here at the time through the satellite image of the humidity, which is this satellite image, which I sometimes show you, right? Which I sometimes put up here, right? And we saw, I don't know if you remember, we saw an image that was seen from the Philippines, which you can't really see. Let's try to make the map smaller. Right now, we see the whole thing, but we saw how from the Philippines all the way to India, you could basically see the east. The phenomenon was huge. Wasn't it really big? There you can see it a little better. From here in the Philippines, you could see the storms, you could see a group of storms, all of that, all of that, all of this, and it moved a bit north and touched this part. So it passed through several seas, through several countries, and then part of those storms started to go south and hit. It was really tough too in Indonesia, Malaysia, all these regions. So Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia itself, and India all had really severe floods. Right? Part of the consequence of these rains, right? According to the National Disaster Management Agency, regarding these situations, they confirm. Or it is expected that the numbers of damages and unfortunately the number of human losses will increase in the coming days. Or the numbers, well, will keep changing as the rescue efforts progress, obviously. The catastrophe has devastated large areas on the island of Sumatra, where rescue teams are using helicopters to bring aid to isolated communities. There are areas that are inaccessible. Here we show you an image in Malaysia where drones are delivering food and medical supplies, among other things, to different locations. They go to buildings like this and leave a basket there, let's say, with food, and then they go to another one and then to another, and that's how they do it, right? Because they can't go out sell? They're slowly rescuing people with boats and more. But in the meantime, they need to have water, they need to have food, because they could be there for hours or days in those places. What's coming now is the hardest part. Why? The flood affects a lot of people in a very direct way and is the most impactful thing from a media perspective. What people always talk about the most, what they don't say, is that in floods, the disaster actually begins when the rain stops. That's when the disaster really starts. Why? That's when you start to see what we're seeing here in these images, right? People are in the middle of chaos, surrounded by mosquitoes, little animals, contaminated water. I mean, you really start to see it. So there are possibilities of health problems and so on, right? I mean, it creates a situation of significant risk, right? And even more so when they don't have the budgets, right? You also see images like this one where people are in the water among the trash, just trying to see what they can salvage and so on, right? You see some terrible things, he says. People use the water from these floods to wash the mud off their clothes in a village affected by a sudden flood in Batanchuru, according to an Associated Press image. And so, well, multiple images of people walking, seeing what happened, some roads that disappeared, areas where simply rescues are gonna take a while, right? Through helicopters, these bags with food are arriving, bags that bring food, that bring supplies that are obviously trying to help. The Indonesian Cabinet Secretariat also published how the army is dropping supplies by air. They throw them. The people of Tapanuli in the north say the survivors were frantically waving at the helicopters to ask for help. Meanwhile, 4 other Navy ships are arriving at the ports to help with the distribution of aid. Well, just one. This is a topic we've been following for a while now. We've been keeping an eye on it. How did this whole timeline of flooding happen, which has already been going on for about 2 weeks? This didn't happen overnight, right? Other issues that also draw attention are protests against the government over there in Spain, right? Thousands of people have been protesting in Madrid to demand early elections due to accusations of corruption. This pressure against President Pedro Sanchez is increasing. And that's how he has managed to hold on, but there is increasing pressure and distrust toward that government. According to reports, Pedro Sanchez is trying to overcome a series of corruption allegations involving his family, his party, and his own administration. The protests are taking place today, called by the conservative Popular Party El Español under the slogan, "Is this mafia or democracy?" They are asking at this protest, which was held basically 3 days after one of Sanchez's former closest allies, the former Minister of Transport, José Luis Ábalos, was placed in pre-trial detention by a judge investigating an alleged bribery for contract scheme. You give me some money and the contracts come your way, right? In the transportation sector, that's at least what he's being accused of, right? This is clearly a major issue in Spain too. And well, let's move on to other matters, right? Also important ones. What's the weather forecast for the next few days? For today and for the coming days, right? Because, as we've already discussed, polar vortices are expected, and this time it looks like, well, a polar vortex collapse is coming and a storm that's synchronized with it, according to the reports. So let's get into the details. Let's see what's happening in the United States, in Mexico, throughout the American continent, and what's happening in Europe. Let's take a look at some details about how things are or what is expected regarding the weather in that sense, right? Thank you very much for joining us. Subscribe if you haven't done so. We are witnessing, according to reports, an event called a sudden stratospheric warming. And this breaks the confinement of Arctic air. It's not a winter storm itself, but what they call a massive injection of polar cold, descending simultaneously over both continents, America and Europe. Yes, let's see if it's visible in the images we have here. But look, you can already see how this situation is going to be, right? So listen, what's going to happen? Look at this tremendous mass of cold air coming down from the United States. All right, this is the vortex. This is when the vortex breaks, the collapse of the vortex. Look, it's coming with a tremendous amount of cold. That's why, even though United States weather reports say it's not a winter storm, it actually is. A massive polar cold front hits both America and Europe at the same time. Since yesterday. Yes, well, it's still not quite right. 29. No, we're still, not yesterday. Yes, sorry. Yesterday was the 29th. And today we started to see some movement, but this is going to last. So stay alert, friends. This is going to last until December 6th. So they come today, the 30th, and then the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So basically the whole week, this polar cold front will be moving in and there will be pretty cold temperatures. A storm or mega storm that's happening, which obviously is called, or the media will call it, a mega winter storm. Because it would be hitting in a coordinated way. What is North America? Everything that is the Great Lakes, the Midwest, the United States, and all of Ontario. Canada, Western Europe. On the European side, the United Kingdom, France, and the Alpine region will also have very cold conditions. This is what the global climate models are showing right now. And the report from Severe Weather Europe as well, which is this report they make over there on the European side. And on the other side, here in America, the report I'm telling you about comes directly from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Atmospheric Monitoring Center. Yes. So then, do you both agree that you are experiencing this vortex? What we're seeing on weather radars challenges this notion of local weather, because we're seeing that weather is becoming less and less local and more global, in the sense that suddenly what is being experienced here in this vortex is also being experienced in Europe. In the end, the planet is a sphere, right? The vortex impacts you in several ways. It's not just one thing. It's not something fixed that's only going to reach Europe or just Asia or just America. This time it broke in both directions, towards Europe and towards America. Yes? That's why we're, let's say, facing this on both sides, right? Europe is entering this month of December with a heating demand that is going to skyrocket. If the energy infrastructure fails, there could even be blackouts or an increase in gas prices. So watch out for the coming days. Are we also saying that the most vital economic corridors of the Northern Hemisphere, which are the industrial zone of the United States and the central part of Europe, will or could be paralyzed by these severe weather conditions? Yes, the north of, let's say, America, including Mexico, even including part of Central America, for example, El Salvador, Guatemala, countries in Central America, will they also have cold conditions, right? The polar vortex is no longer a perfect circle over the pole, but what the pressure maps show is a deformed structure, as if something had hit those vortices, because the vortex constantly breaks apart. This, well, it's not just me saying it. Severe Weather Europe says it in November 2025, according to the analysis excerpt they themselves are publishing in what they call the synchronized storm, because it's a storm impacting both America and Europe simultaneously. And this, well, obviously is super interesting, and we're going to take a quick look at it. Regarding the weather, can you see everything? How long will the cold last? Basically, from north to south in the United States and Europe, we see, there it is. Yes, we see here. We are studying up to December 4th, December 5th, December 6th, and see how the most extreme cold keeps moving down. Huh? If I already go to next week? For example, look at this day. This day is very interesting because it shows how in states like Minnesota, yes, look at the temperature in Minnesota next Sunday in a week. How is it going to be? How is it going to be? How is it going to be? The coast? Impressive, -25. The north coast is even colder, -26. Well, tremendous. As for temperatures, I think it's clear that from now on, starting right now, we're going to experience very cold temperatures. For the United States, for Canada and Mexico, well, it's going to be cold. Obviously, no, it won't be freezing, but yes, it will be cold, cool, so to speak. Single-digit temperatures in Coahuila, in Nuevo Leon as well. Also single-digit temperatures in Chihuahua. There will also be single-digit temperatures. 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, excuse me. Also the same towards Baja California. Temperatures will be in the single digits, so basically the whole north is going to be cold. It won't be freezing, just cold. And towards the center of the country, also single digits. For example, in Mexico City, if we look, for example, tomorrow night, they'll be at 7. In fact, actually, tonight we're already seeing cold temperatures. Yes. Drizzles will also be abundant in many parts of the United States and Mexico. For example, some areas in southern Mexico and Guatemala are already reporting temperatures of 10 to 12 degrees. Let's see if we can spot some of those points. So yes, it's going to be a very interesting topic. The same goes for Tuesday and the same for Wednesday. Also on Wednesday, it gets even colder. It even shows up to 9 degrees, so it's going to be several days of cold weather. December starts off, well, December doesn't start off as winter, sorry. It feels more wintry, even though winter hasn't officially started yet. But we see that from west to east, the west is experiencing super cold temperatures in the United States, and temperatures that, if we look at it from the European side as well. Well, we're also going to see how starting tomorrow, temperatures will start dropping, and it's going to be cold as well in countries that are closer to the south of Europe. In fact, right? We're already talking, for example, about Spain, where temperatures will even drop below zero. In parts of northern Spain, temperatures will already be near or below 0, right? There it is. The same goes for France, not to mention, right? and for the United Kingdom, even more so. And other countries will even have slightly colder temperatures, right? But obviously, intense weather is expected, let's say, right? As for cold weather in the north, even the center of America, temperatures will keep getting colder in the coming weeks. But this week is starting to intensify, right? Now, regarding the accumulation of rain and water, let's take a look at this. Let's see if we can put it here. Rain accumulation first. This is today's rain accumulation for November 30th until next week. Look at that. Isn't there a lot of rain in Mexico? There isn't much moisture or rain, but still. There will be activity in the north and along the Gulf of Mexico, but little moisture in the center. Look. All the southeastern United States, from Texas to Florida, and even up to the Carolinas, there's a significant amount of water, and besides the cold, there's also humidity in the northern United States as well, and a little bit in the center, and a bit of rain toward the west too, right? Drizzle, not too much, but that's the rain for now. Check out the new snow, right? The snow that's coming this very week, this is new snow. All of this is going to be coming into the center of the United States. Even some mountain peaks in Mexico could get snow, yes, but mainly it's going to be in the northeast, northwest, and central United States with snow, right? In the far west, California and Oregon won't get much snow. Maybe Washington will, as you can see. Yes, quite a bit from what I see. For example, not Seattle itself, but that city is kind of surrounded by mountains and things like that. Suddenly, no, there isn't that much snow, but around it, yes, the mountains and all that. Well, they're going to have a lot of snow, apparently, but this whole area is going to have snowfall. So that's interesting for you to keep in mind. Let's also see quickly over to Europe. Look, it's not much, but yes, some peaks, some mountains could have snowfall within Europe. No, the problem isn't really the snow there in Europe. The problem is more about the cold. And over here on this side, well, there will definitely be more snow. Towards the United States, cold towards Mexico, even towards Central America, and by the way, in the South of America. High temperatures will be very hot in the northern part of Argentina, right next to Paraguay. This whole area will have temperatures, I'm getting closer to 40 degrees, around 38 degrees or so. This will be observed tomorrow, Monday, December 1st. Temperatures are getting closer to summer now. You can start to see summer a little more. From the South of America and also for Brazil with very warm temperatures. And that's what's going to stand out. I think over there it's just hot temperatures. That's the current trend I see for that region. Let's quickly go to the comments because from here we'll move on to another topic, but not here, instead on Pepe Clips. We'll be there for those who want to drop by. We're going to talk about what James David Vance has been revealing on these topics. About WAPS, in fact, he even talks suddenly as if it's become normalized. The fact that these topics are being talked about a bit, I mean, the Secretary of State talking in this Asia Disclosure documentary about the subject of UFOs. The case of James David Vance appears in a podcast talking not only about the topic, but even talking about some entities, and I don't know what else. So later we're going to talk about that, and we're also going to talk about other cases, other topics as well. If you want to stop by for a while during the broadcast, we're going to chat a bit with the community. Obviously with great pleasure about this topic. There's a case that maybe we'll talk about, but that's more of an anecdotal case. Because it's basically a story, a testimony from someone very close to what this Vance says. That's why it caught my attention that these testimonies are coming out. Recently, when James David Vance discusses these entities, it really stands out to me. Interesting, isn't it? Honestly, very interesting. I mean, it's a bit unusual, right? But anyway, greetings. How has Leonardo Escudero been? Thank you very much. Very good, Francisco Archie. A big greeting. When are they going to fix this issue with the names, right? Meanwhile, I'm going to check with some other friends first. Let's see if that's happening. I think it's a YouTube issue, but I'll ask if they can tell me when it'll be fixed, right? About this, did you travel? Did you send photos of the tree? Great. I'll check all that tonight so I can post the photos you send me tonight. Thank you so much. Greetings, de jour. Greetings. Very good, he says, right? Send me an email, okay? The email. Okay. I'll go check it. Alejandro, how have you been? Thank you so much, Alejandro. Greetings, Benedicto. How are you? How have you been? Greetings to Argentina. Very good. Angel Murillo says, how are you? How have you been? Also, a big greeting. There's the email. There's the link. I hadn't seen it. There's the link for, well, where are we going to go right now? No, this one. Greetings. How are you? Very good. Marcela Benedicto Rublox. What's up? Anner80 says even your eyelashes freeze. And I imagine that if we were just out for a walk and it was a bit chilly, you could feel it. The really cold part for us hasn't arrived yet. It's supposed to come around, well, actually, around this time, starting at 2, supposedly. So the cold must be in full force by now. Alright then, let's go, shall we? Let's go now so we can continue the conversation. Let's go over there. Pepe Clips should switch automatically, supposedly. And if not, there's the link so you can join us in the next broadcast. Let's head over there right now.
Thank you for watching the Pepe Live News, where the events of planet Earth and secrets of outer space are analyzed like nowhere else. Thank you for subscribing.